My name is Kit Evans, and I'm the General Manager and a Director of SaveEnergy, which is a community benefit society based here in Maidenhead. I'm joined on the call tonight by my wife, Maria, who is not here in her spousely capacity, but rather because her company has been providing consultancy services and support to SaveEnergy, and she's been quite closely involved with the marketing and promotion of SaveEnergy, hence her role here tonight. So that quickly brings me on to who we are. And the answer is SaveEnergy is made up of local people, and we all have one thing in common. We're passionate about community and social justice, which is why we've both created an energy organisation and made it a community benefit society. Our directors and staff have come from a variety of backgrounds. Some energy projects such as MEG Energy, which is solar energy in the Maidenhead area, the Reading Hydro project. Some from large companies. One even had a history in one of the large oil companies before he saw the light. Charities, entrepreneurial, small business. We've got a lot of different skills. And essentially what we are about is providing the other half of the carbon reduction story. Everyone understands the concept of getting to net carbon emission zero by 2050. And a brilliant way of doing that is through all of the renewable energy projects that have been going up but in the community and also out in the North Sea. That's a vital part of the mix, and the energy mix in the UK is moving away from coal, away from gas and towards renewables and nuclear, of course. But we are all about the other side of that, which is saving energy rather than using it in the first place. That means it doesn't really matter what colour it is. And the focus of our attention is energy efficiency in the home. We are here to help people all the way along their journey to full retrofit, or whatever part of full retrofit they're looking for. And that can help people from wherever they start, from no understanding of the property and the fabric of their building to a good understanding of what needs doing and some support and advice required. We have a vision, and it's very simple: a community that does everything it can to reduce energy consumption sustainably. And that means ideally not adding to the problem using petrochemical products to insulate ourselves. Very quickly, these are the main culprits at SaveEnergy. I won't go through their biographies because they're on the website if you're very interested. Suffice to say, these are the people who have made it happen to date. They're the kernel of SaveEnergy, but not necessarily the future. They're going to obviously be part of the future, but we need to expand and expand fast. We are a community benefit society, and I think as members of Marlow Energy Group, you probably understand that better than most in terms of what that means. We are owned by our members, and at the moment we have something like 45 members. Anybody who pays us £1 can be part of that group, and it gives you voting rights at AGMs to elect the members of the board, to set and comment on strategy and the direction. And we very much plan to make our members a driving force in SaveEnergy. So we'll be consulting them regularly to help us guide our development. A CBS is not for profit. There are no beneficial owners, and that's very important to us. This is all to the benefit of the people that we serve, the community that we're part of. And that means that there are no perverse incentives to send people in one direction over another, recommend one supplier over another. We can be completely independent because we're not in it for the money. A CBS can also raise repayable capital from our community. Think of it as patient capital, if you like, but it will have a return attached to it, as you'll probably be familiar. And we'll come back to this a little bit later. But more than anything else, we are not just going to be an organisation that does good things in the community and relies on grants to do them. We are a commercial organisation. We're going to be charging the people who can afford to pay so that we can support the people that can't, and therefore ensure there's a just transition to a cleaner future for everybody. We've come from a standing start in 2023. We got some initial seed funding, and that enabled us to do the initial strategy and development work. We had a couple of false starts, but we registered with the Financial Conduct Authority in June 2023 as a community benefit society. Planning development really started seriously then. And I was the first employee about a year ago, which doesn't seem like possible, but there you go. It's been a year, and I hope I've got something to show for it. We then funded by the Community Energy Fund and to do a proper feasibility study for the business model that we'd thought up. And I'm very pleased to say that that is successfully concluded. And we're just about to receive the last tranche of funding for that. And we've also been funded by the National Lottery to provide energy advice to those who most need it in our community. That enabled us to recruit our first energy advisor, Ian Daly, who was on our pictures slide. And he's already reaching out into the community to housing associations and care groups and care homes to ensure that we reach the people who are most in need of support, struggling with high energy bills and leaky houses. So what's the challenge? Well, fundamentally, this is all about a transition from fossil fuel for our heat and light, our power requirements. And in order to reach net zero, there is obviously no doubt that we've got to stop burning oil and gas. But as we do that, there is going to be an increased demand for electricity. Every time we switch from a petrol car to an electric car, every time we switch from a gas boiler to a heat pump or an electric source of heating in our home, it's going to increase the demand. And there have been some forecasts that say the demand on our grid is going to be fourfold before we've finished this transition. But more than that, we have an incredibly poor housing stock here in the UK. It's probably the worst in Europe. Our average energy performance certificate figure is D60, and that is woefully inadequate to be able to adapt to electric heating in particular as a future form of energy use. It's all very old stock, isn't it? The number of Victorian terraces that we drive past and Edwardian villas. And of course, all of those properties were built well before building regulations of any description, but in particular, building regulations that had any kind of thermal consideration attached. There are fewer flats or apartments here in the UK. And that means there are fewer opportunities to have lovely warm houses or flats either side of you and above you and beneath you, keeping you insulated and therefore more energy efficient. So we've all got roofs, and all of those roofs are leaking heat. And fundamentally, our building stock was built at a time when energy was of limitless abundance, and we didn't really worry too much about how much leaked through the roof in the first place. That's got to change. So what is the response from SaveEnergy? We are going to operate in a 10-mile radius from Maidenhead, predominantly because that is where predominantly that's where we're going to be able to encompass the whole of the Royal Borough, which was one of our initial funding streams. But inside 10 miles of Maidenhead, you can see we go up as far as Wickham and obviously Marlow, Henley, into East Reading, Winnersh and Wokingham, Ascot, and out to Windsor and Colnbrook. There are 265,000 homes in that circle, and only 3% of them are properly insulated. More than 50% of them are rated D or E, which means that they are going to need intervention before they can adapt to the new world that we're talking about. And if you take into account that just in the Royal Borough, although this is translatable to the national statistics, 40% of the borough's carbon emissions are from the domestic energy usage of its residents. And therefore, in order to get anywhere close to net zero, we are going to have to do something very serious about the performance of our energy efficiency of our homes. This is urgent. So what we do is really quite simple. First of all, as I mentioned already, we are funded and we will continue to seek funds to provide any energy advice free to everybody. That means that no matter your circumstance, we will be there to give you the advice that you need to consider which tariff you're on, to follow the tips and tricks to be able to reduce your energy consumption in the home, to deal with the mold and damp that's in your bathroom or your kitchen, to do all of those things and more. We are also we have now developed, as part of that feasibility study, a core product. It's a AAA evaluation, and it stands for Advice, Assessment and Action. It's a combination of a thermal imaging survey, both outside and inside a property, alongside an EPC certificate, which describes the fabric of the building and the big measures, the steps that should be taken to improve its energy efficiency. You're probably familiar with an EPC anyway as a document that you need if you're buying or selling or renting a property, but this has got a lot more information on it already. The government are just in the process of improving it massively to make it a much more usable document in terms of energy efficiency. And we will continue to use it as a part of the evaluation of an individual's property. The thermal imaging enables us to find those unique foibles and fabric weaknesses in a property, such as thermal bridges, drafts, slumped cavity wall insulation. I was at a house in Marlow the other day with slumped cavity. And all of those things that a householder needs to know about their own particular property. So you combine those two methods of evaluation together and you get a very useful energy efficiency report for a householder, giving them some recommendations in terms of priority of impact and cost, and obviously listening to them in terms of their need. We are also offering energy performance certificates on their own, which are both as an energy efficiency measure on their own are useful, but of course people also need them to sell houses, and we'll support that. We're already talking to our local draft busters about joining forces and making sure that we provide as much intervention as possible as early on as possible. And there are some obvious things to be done in terms of blocking up drafts and gaps. And throughout, 20% of everything that we do will be free or low cost to the benefit of our community for those that can't afford it. And that is the community benefit that we will provide. More than that, though, we're interested in creating new green skilled jobs in this community and every community. The shortfall in people who have the understanding to be able to support customers in the UK is really quite significant, and we want to do something about it. So as we expand, we're not going to seek to poach assessors and surveyors from other organisations. We're going to try and recruit them from other industries and give them the training that they will need to succeed in the green industries. And that way, we're being part of the solution. And we're also interested in employing people who are typically excluded from the labour market. There is no reason why many of these people can't be gainfully employed and trained, which changes people's lives. And we want to be part of that story too. This is what a AAA report looks like, or at least sections of it. I won't make you read the small print, but essentially, as you can see, you've got the front cover, the thermal imaging section. There are multiple images from inside and outside the property. In this case, this was a built-in garage underneath the property that was completely unheated, with a thin sheet metal front garage door, leaking heat from the rest of the house and causing the whole thing to be much more energy inefficient. The front page of the EPC certificate that we created for this house, and the recommendations in terms of both findings from the thermal imaging and from the EPC. as well as exploration of the measures that the EPC suggests. Does it work? Well, I won't make you listen to me read this to you. I'll give you just a minute to read it for yourself. So when I went to Peter's home, I was a little bit dubious that I would be able to help him. He had already had solar on the roof and air source heat pump outside. But it turns out that a great portion of the frontage of his property was a bay window that had not been insulated to the same level as the cavity walls either side. And the great glowing image of that was enough of a spur to make him feel that we did a good job for him. I think we did. And that just goes to show that every house has its weaknesses, its structural and fabric challenges that need to be explored. In the future, well, we are going to consider training to provide heat loss surveys, especially in light of the pre-installation of air source heat pumps for customers. Fundamentally, we've talked to a number of air source heat pump suppliers, and they're so busy, especially at the moment, that they're saying to customers, we need to do a heat loss survey, but we can't spare the resource or the time to do it unless and until you have signed on the bottom line. So commit your £15,000-20,000, and then we'll come and tell you what size heat pump you need, how many radiators you need to change, whether your property is even suitable for a heat pump, and it leaves customers unsatisfied. So we plan to provide that service, put the information in the hands of the customer, and do it to a standard where any heat pump supplier would accept, that would accept, address the concerns of customers before they make that purchase. Permeability is another tried and tested method of testing for leaks and gaps in people's homes, and the beauty of that system is that it's year round. And you'll be familiar, because I know Marlow Energy have a thermal camera, but you can only really use it when there's a sufficient gradient in temperature outside to inside. Air permeability works year round, and is an important part of the government's new focus on energy performance. In fact, if they're available in future EPC models, air permeability statistics will be incorporated and used as part of the energy efficiency methodology for a property. And we're very seriously thinking about a loft clearance and insulation service. We are finding that most people in the UK have got 10 centimetres of loft insulation between the joists, which is for many years exactly what they were told to do. The current guidelines are for considerably more than that, but so many people have filled their loft with the accumulated belongings of a lifetime that they can't contemplate the idea of removing all of those items and then doing the work in the loft. So we're looking at working with partners or employing people ourselves who can overcome that barrier and clear the loft, work with the customer to sort out what they want to keep, what they want to throw away. While they're doing that, actually do the work in the loft to increase the insulation and probably put loft legs and platforms in there so that the customer can put back the belongings that they want to keep, and we will take away the belongings they want to throw. And suddenly a barrier becomes a solution. So that's something very exciting that we're planning to develop over the course of the summer. What don't we do is a very interesting question, isn't it? We are not going to sell people heat pumps, solar panels, home batteries. We're not going to sell them significant insulation measures, because that creates a false incentive to obviously recommend our own product or guide customers in a particular direction. Neither are we going to take commission from any installer of those measures that we recommend. We will recommend people because they are the right potential supplier for a customer, who are trusted and known in the community, who are reliable, professional, and can be trusted to do the job that we want them to do for a customer. We will never tell a customer to do something based on anything other than their own interest and their own objectives. And of course, those objectives change according to where they are in their life process and their ambitions for the future. We will not advise on topics or technologies that we have no training for, because we want to be expert and trusted in our community. And our philosophy is to be that trusted friend and expert for everyone in the community. So that is the core of our brand. And if we can achieve that, then we can make sure that everybody is supported on their journey. So in order to do that, we actually ensure that the people that we employ and work and provide to our community are trained. Our energy advisors will be all National Energy Action Level 3 energy awareness trained, which is the standard for energy advisors in the UK. Anybody who's surveying a home needs to be at least level 3 domestic energy assessor. On top of that, a retrofit assessor or a heat loss assessor will be the next steps on those journeys. And even the thermography that we do, we'll train people in ITC level 1 thermography, just the basics, to understand how to calibrate their camera properly, how to interpret the imagery properly, because people deserve expert advice and support. And in the future, well, I've already mentioned heat loss surveying, air permeability testing, retrofit assessor, which is part of the journey for whole house planning of retrofit. And there are some people who literally want to do the whole thing in one large project. Retrofit assessor is an important role in that process, and we'll be there to provide the services. This is Ask the Expert. So I wanted to share a little bit of insight in terms of what is the issues around energy efficiency in the home. And I'm going to start with the basics. I don't know whether you know, you probably do, because you guys are very well informed in the world of energy efficiency. 25% of your heat would be lost through an uninsulated roof, only surpassed by 35% of your heat through the walls. And therefore, when you're looking at the energy efficiency of a property, walls and roofs are the absolute key to improving the performance. Yes, you'll lose 10% through double glazed windows. 15% can be lost through drafts, and 15% can go out the floor of a property. But 60% of all energy lost is in two measures, and one of them, at least the loft, is very easily dealt with. The other, if it's cavity wall, is also very easily dealt with. In our experience to date, and we've visited probably tens of houses now rather than hundreds, very few have more than 100 mil of insulation at the joists, and that's got to change because they're losing energy. In our experience, most cavity walls are already filled. It's quite rare to find an unfilled wall, but by the same token, most solid walled houses are still uninsulated because it's just so hard, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So loft insulation, this is a picture of a loft with 100 mil between those joists. We need to add another 170 mil. We need 270 millimeters, which is the current government guideline for insulation in the loft. And anybody that hasn't got that, or at least 200, is losing energy. You might wonder how you could keep things in your loft if you've got that lovely soft pillow on floating above the joists. Well, the answer is loft legs. Simple legs that are attached to the top of the joists, and then you can put a platform on for storage. This is a very cheap, relatively cheap measure, and gives you a quick payback. You can make your money back in a short number of years. This, however, is not a cheap measure. This is probably the most expensive insulation measure that you could consider doing to a property. External wall insulation. What you're looking at is 10 centimeter thick polystyrene boards, which are being fixed to the outside of the property. Those will then be rendered to create a watertight finish. It is, very effective, but it adds an extra 100 millimeter of depth on a property. The eaves overhang where the wall meets the eaves above has to be large enough so that it stops any potential water ingress. So there are some houses that can't be treated with external wall insulation. And it has a long payback. So if you're thinking of turning round and selling your house in a couple of years' time, this is probably not for you. However, it makes a immediate and noticeable difference. People have described it to me as like having a warm hug for your house. It does change the appearance of the house. Sometimes I would argue for the better. I'm making no judgment calls about pebble dash, but personally, I think a smooth render finish is nicer. But anyway, that's external wall insulation. And then the counterpoint to that is internal wall, where you're literally applying an insulation barrier to the inside of the wall and then replastering or lining over the top. This is most relevant where external is impractical. So, for instance, if you're in a listed property, there is no way you'll be allowed to put a rendered finish on the outside of it. But also aesthetically, there are many houses that would just not look right that are with a render finish, where they've got beautiful Victorian brick detailing, for instance. And this is the alternative option. It's just as thermally effective. But it means that you are going to have to take everything out of your house, basically. In all of the rooms that you are going to treat, you're going to need to take all of the furniture, fixtures, fittings, including radiators and light fittings, flooring, skirting boards. You're going to take it right back to bare and then apply this finish before you can rebuild your home. So it's typically the kind of project that you do when you're renovating a house from start to finish and you're taking everything out of it anyway. But it is lower cost than external, and some people are prepared to consider that disruption in order to get the energy savings and a relatively quick payback. Solid floors are another thing that I'm meeting a lot of in this area in particular, where a house has been built on a solid concrete slab, or in a much more modern house where it's been built with block and beam concrete beams with concrete blocks placed in between them. This too is a very disruptive measure, and this picture will demonstrate the level of fitting that you have to take out of a room in order to fit this effectively. It does cost you some ceiling height, 2 to 5 centimeters, but in most houses that's something that people can live with. And you can combine it with underfloor heating, of course, which is a brilliant way to heat a property if you're especially considering an air source heat pump. So there are opportunities here. And it does, as I mentioned in that overview, can potentially save you up to 15% of your energy loss. The other type of floor that you're going to meet a lot of is the suspended wooden floor that you'll find in Victorian and early Edwardian properties and before. In order to deal with that, the standard solution is to literally take the floor up and put insulation in between the beams with a air tightness layer underneath, and then put everything back in. So very disruptive once again. The alternative to that is something that a couple of customers have talked to me about recently, which is a little robot that you can insert into the cavity underneath the floor, and it will spray the spray foam insulation that's so famously not allowed on inside roofs to the underside of your floor, and is very effective. So this is a relatively low cost measure, but it's not for everybody because of the disruption. So I thought that was an interesting little tour around the kind of measures that you can consider for a property. And I want to finish this section with a summary of the SaveEnergy proposition. So I want you to understand more than anything that we plan to be expert, qualified in our fields and impartial in our advice. And if we can do that, if we can remain true to that vision, then I think we are going to succeed. We will only focus on advice and recommendations that help people move along their retrofit journey. And fundamentally, it says it on our logo, what we are talking about is decarbonising. But for those that can't pay, we will pay for them ourselves, and we'll do that by charging those that can. And for many people, it's not about decarbonisation, it's about enjoying warmer, more comfortable homes that are cheaper to heat. And the beauty of this is that that's a proposition that sits alongside decarbonisation. It's the same outcome. Our business plan is quite clear. In the current financial year, which finishes in June next month, we will have had an income of just around £90,000, and that income is for the most part grant funding income. In future years, we are going to have employed energy advisors, surveyors, assessors, and they will be charging customers who can afford to pay, and we anticipate that immediately we will be able to move into a trading surplus. And as we expand our services, the number of people that we employ, that surplus will increase. It will enable us to provide the free services, but it will also enable us to repay the financing that we are seeking to secure to make all of this happen. And that brings me very neatly on to the financing that is going to make all of this happen. We have just launched, as a community benefit society, our first share offer. It's our pioneering share offer. And we're seeking to raise a minimum of £50,000, a maximum of £100,000. It's been open since the 2nd of April and was due to close on Friday, although the directors have just decided to extend it for the 2-week optional extension period so that we can maximize the amount of money that we raise. I am very thrilled to tell you that as of tonight, our total raised is £49,900. So we are going to make it. We know that there are other people who are going to invest, and therefore that £50,000 is secured. We know that our future is secured. The question now is how much we can raise in the remaining 2.5 weeks, because the more we can raise, the faster we can go. We're asking people to invest between £100,000 and £10,000, but people can only hold 10% of all of the shares issued. So if we have, we raise a total of £75,000, for instance, the single largest shareholding can be £7,500. The big news for us is that we presented our business plan and our share offer to HMRC, and they gave us the advanced assurance that this offer will qualify for SEIS, Seed Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is one of the 4 venture capital encouragement schemes that HMRC operate. It gives a 50% tax relief on your investment. So let me just illustrate that. If you were to say invest £1,000 in SaveEnergy, you would receive £500 back on your tax bill this year. Now that requires you to be paying tax, and obviously SEIS isn't valuable to anybody that doesn't pay tax. And there are some other qualifying criteria, such as you have to be resident in the UK. But it's a great opportunity to reduce your tax bill and support what we hope you think is an important new initiative in the community. This is qualified for the SEIS because it's an unproven business model. We are starting out from scratch, and no one has done something like this in this area before. So I do have to tell you, because it's the sensible and fair thing to do, that your capital may be at risk. However, this share offer has been reviewed by Co-ops UK and has been awarded their standard mark, which is a mark of assurance that it has been inspected by experts, and what we say in it is fair, true and accurate. So there should be some reassurance to that. we will use the capital that we raise to expand and pay staff. While we build the commercial income, we need to train them and pay them their salaries until they can start earning income for themselves. It will enable that investment in training that we feel is so important, that everybody that we employ is trained and fully qualified, and in turn that will then support our growth. So it's a win-win situation. It'll put the equipment that we need, such as thermal imaging cameras and surveying equipment, laser measures, ladders, that kind of thing, in people's hands, and fundamentally it will enable us to continue with a trading surplus that gives the directors confidence that we are a viable entity ongoing. So it's vital to the security of the future of SaveEnergy. And the thing is, the faster we grow will only depend on the amount that we can raise. If we stick at 50, then we'll be able to employ fewer people. Optimally, we'll have 80. Ideally, please, we could raise 100. And that will just enable us to do all of this quicker and better and get out into the community and support them sooner. So if you're interested in more, please visit our website, SaveEnergy.Coop. You'll find the full detail of the Pioneer Share offer and the business plan behind it, as well as lots of other FAQs and interesting information. I'd love to talk to you individually about this if you'd like to. You can email me to make an appointment or ask a question at pioneer@saveenergy.coop. And this is my phone number. Please ring it at any time. We love talking about this stuff. So more than anything else, I wanted to say thank you. Thank you to you for listening. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you found it interesting and useful. At this point, I'll stop sharing my slides and move to any questions that you might have.
I looked at that slide with the heat loss from houses, and I think that's the same as the one that I saw in the 1980s. And I don't think it's changed. And I think that the heat loss through a roof is way lower, and certainly the cavity wall's way lower, and therefore the other heat losses, the drafts through the windows and through the floor, have in percentage terms increased. I still agree with insulating loss, and I was interested to see that you were saying 270 millimetres. I'll throw in that South Oxfordshire Housing Association, now when they insulate their properties, they don't bother with 270 millimetres. They just say, we don't want to do it again, we're doing 400 millimetres. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. In fact, I'd go 500 or 600. You only want to do it once, so why not do it well? And it's cheap and easy as well.
Yeah, so it is. That's the point. So that diagram obviously is if there had been no measures taken on a house, if it is completely uninsulated in the walls, in its roof, drafts as built, then those proportions are accurate. And yeah, fair enough. Most people's houses have already had some measures taken on them, but I do perceive that especially 10 millimeters between the joists is just so inadequate now that this is a big win. And as you say, Tony, it is a relatively quick, cheap and easy thing to do if we can overcome the barriers that I described. So I'm not saying that drafts aren't vital as part of the overall, and the air permeability that we want to do will speak to that. But yeah, without question, we've got to look at the whole picture, and everybody's house is different.
Can I just add, Kit, that Marlow Energy Group, when they do their surveys for the thermal camera imaging surveys, advocate 300 millimeters, or in old money, 12 inches. And, you know, we think that's the absolute minimum we should be looking at.
You're right. I mean, the more the better. Realistically, people still want to use their lofts to store all of those belongings that are precious to them, but they don't need in their house. So we have to be realistic and compromise in terms of creating the loft leg platforms in lofts as well. It is actual government guidelines, 270 mil. That doesn't mean to say it's right, because for a long time they advocated 10 mil. 10 centimeters. So yes, the more the merrier. And if somebody wants to put 500 mil in their loft, I would happily do that for them.
But
Can I ask? Sorry, John. Do you want to go on?
Just add before Andy jumps in, so I remember it. As far as I remember, we still have an Ask the Experts video on our website, which is from a company that actually supplies the service of the robot that goes under the floor. I can't remember what the robot. So Qbot, that's right, Qbot. So that video is actually on our website, so you can learn a lot more about that if you want to.
I will. I was with a customer today who's had it done and was raving about it.
Good.
Yeah, and we've also, I think, John, correct me if I'm wrong, we've got a video on the website on the draft, a provider of the sort of draft measurement system.
I think fundamentally there are 265,000 houses in a 10-mile radius, so there's more than enough for everybody. So I don't mind. We are not in competition, because anybody that is helped by anybody else is a step forward to our ultimate objective, which is to decarbonize our housing stock. So I don't consider it competition at all. I can speak to my experience here in Maidenhead, where there are community energy groups focused on draft busters. You're probably familiar with them. And in a number of cases, the draft busters volunteers have recognised the advantages of working with SaveEnergy and complementing SaveEnergy. So certainly they love to be able to be targeted to houses that really need draft busting help that can't pay, and we are going to be turning those over in increasing numbers. But more than that, we're offering all of those draft busters volunteers the same training to become energy advisors, so that they have even more skills when they're in front of a customer. They have a better understanding of the dynamics of the energy usage in a property, how to help a customer better. Because I think every opportunity to do that is an opportunity that we cannot afford to miss.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you, but that was a question that occurred to me earlier. I mean, that might be attractive to some of our volunteers. Is there how does that work? Is there a charge? How does that get organized?
No, there is no charge. We will be working with volunteers across our area, and if you have volunteers that want to work with us, that would be thrilling, because they're obviously already clearly understand the value and power of what we're doing here. We wouldn't charge people for training, and of course they're volunteers, so they can do as much or as little as they want. But essentially, we really believe in the power of putting information in people's hands, and we'd love to work with every group, including Marlow Energy Group, to help our community do that.
Okay, well, we'll come back to that in due course, I expect.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I'd like that. Thank you, Andrew.
If there isn't, I can obviously do my bit on our project. Is that all right with you, Kit?
Yes. Shall I stop recording now, John?
No, keep recording, because we'll leave this in.
Okay.
Because this is a relatively important ongoing thing, as it were.
Okay.
So for those people who don't know or watching this video for the first time, Marlow Energy Group has half a dozen members who are willing to invite Marlow and High Wycombe residents into their homes to see what can be achieved relatively easily to save both energy and money in an average Marlow or High Wycombe house. These visits will be arranged through appointment. So if you're interested in getting one of these energy efficient houses, seeing one of these energy efficient houses, please email us at marlowenergygroup@gmail.com, and we will liaise with you in order to visit your closest greenhouse. Now, a quick NB to that is that we don't have a huge amount of people on this video at the moment, and one of the reasons, unbeknown to us when we arranged it, was it's the first meeting of Marlow Town Council tonight, the new town council. 4 members of the council are also members of Marlow Energy Group.
Oh, that's a shame.
There's at least 4 people that probably would have been here in addition, but that's the way things go. But we are looking very positively at Marlow Town Council to be a much more progressive council in sustainability in the future.
Good, then it will be worth it.
Yeah. Okay.
I just wanted to say thank you once again for your time and attention. It's very generous of you to give us a platform to talk about Save Energy. I hope that you found it interesting. I am passionate about this. I think it's vital for the future of our communities and for the planet. And every and any level of support through volunteering, through investment, through joining our board. We're looking for board members. That would all be fantastic, and I'd love to hear from you for any reason. So thank you again for the opportunity.
Okay, can I just express Marlow Energy Group's thanks to Kit and for Maria as well for coming along tonight, and for Kit for giving an excellent presentation, and wish Save Energy a huge amount of luck and good fortune with regard to their share issue, and hopefully it will get much nearer 100,000 than 50,000.
Fingers crossed.
Good.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Thank you.
very much for coming.
Have a lovely evening.